The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and the wealth of San Francisco's elite. The annual Architectural Innovation Charity Gala drew the city's most influential developers, designers, and investors, all gathered to celebrate and fund sustainable building initiatives. Natalie Chen stood near the back of the room, trying not to feel out of place in her borrowed navy gown. At 28, she was one of the youngest junior architects at Blackwell Enterprises, and tonight her design for an eco-friendly mixed-use development had won the Innovation Award. Marcus Blackwell watched from his private table as the young architect accepted her award. He recognized her, of course. She worked in his company's design department, though they'd never spoken directly. He employed over 2,000 people across his real estate empire, and he made it a point not to know them personally. Emotions complicated business. Attachments created weakness. At 36, Marcus had built his fortune on cold calculation and ruthless efficiency, earning himself the nickname, the Ice King, in business circles. But something about Natalie's acceptance speech caught his attention. She spoke with genuine passion about creating housing that served communities rather than just profit margins, about architecture that healed rather than harmed the environment. It was idealistic and impractical, yet Marcus found himself listening. After the ceremony, Marcus approached the bar where Natalie stood alone, looking slightly overwhelmed by the evening's attention. "Congratulations on your win," he said, his deep voice making her turn quickly. Natalie's eyes widened as she recognized Marcus Blackwell. Her boss's boss's boss. The man who owned the company and half of San Francisco's skyline. "Mr. Blackwell. Thank you. I didn't expect. I didn't think you'd be here." "I fund this event," he replied, allowing himself a slight smile. "Your design was impressive. Impractical from a profit standpoint, but impressive nonetheless." "Sustainability doesn't have to sacrifice profit," Natalie said, her nervousness giving way to passion for her subject. "Studies show that green buildings actually increase property values and tenant retention rates by—" "I know the statistics," Marcus interrupted, but not unkindly. "Tell me something I don't know." They talked for 2 hours. Marcus found himself genuinely engaged in conversation for the first time in years, debating architecture philosophy, challenging her ideas, being challenged in return. Natalie was brilliant, unintimidated by his reputation, and completely captivating when she spoke about her work. When the gala ended, Marcus did something he never did. "Would you like to continue this conversation somewhere quieter? My penthouse is nearby. We could discuss your design proposals in more detail." Natalie knew she should say no. Every warning bell in her head was ringing. But something in Marcus's gray eyes, a loneliness that matched her own, made her say yes. His penthouse was all glass and steel, modern and cold like the man himself. But when Marcus poured them wine and they stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, something shifted between them. "Why architecture?" Marcus asked softly. "Why do you care so much about buildings?" "Because spaces shape lives," Natalie replied. "The right building can give someone hope. The wrong one can take it away. I grew up in subsidized housing that was falling apart. I know what it feels like to live in a space that tells you don't matter." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "My parents died when I was 19. Car accident. I inherited everything, the company, the wealth, the expectations. I've spent 17 years building an empire, and I'm completely alone in it." The vulnerability in his voice broke something open between them. When Natalie reached up to touch his face, Marcus pulled her close and kissed her with an intensity that took her breath away. They made their way to his bedroom, and for one night, the Ice King melted. Their intimacy was passionate but also tender. Marcus held her as though she was something precious, whispered things in the darkness that revealed the lonely man beneath the cold exterior. Natalie felt connected to him in a way she'd never experienced with anyone else. But morning brought reality crashing back. Marcus was distant as he dressed for work, his walls firmly rebuilt. "Last night was a mistake," he said without looking at her. "I expect you to be professional about this. What happened here doesn't leave this room." Natalie felt like she'd been slapped, but she held her head high. "Of course, Mr. Blackwell. Perfectly professional." She left his penthouse feeling used and foolish, but determined to maintain her dignity. She would pretend it never happened. She would focus on her career and forget about the man who had shown her his heart before locking it away again. 3 months passed. Natalie threw herself into her work, avoiding any situations where she might encounter Marcus directly. But her body had other plans. The exhaustion, the nausea, the missed periods. When she finally took the pregnancy test in her small apartment's bathroom, staring at the 2 pink lines, her entire world s. Natalie spent a week in agony, trying to decide what to do. Marcus had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with her, but this was his child. He deserved to know. Finally, she requested a meeting with him through his executive assistant, claiming it was urgent and personal. Marcus's office occupied the entire top floor of Blackwell Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of San Francisco Bay, but the space felt as cold as its owner. He barely glanced up from his computer when she entered. "Miss Chen. What's so urgent that it requires interrupting my afternoon?" Natalie's hands trembled as she stood before his massive desk. "I'm pregnant, Marcus. The baby is yours." The silence that followed felt suffocating. Marcus slowly lifted his eyes to meet hers, and what she saw there made her blood freeze. Not surprise or concern, pure, contemptuous rage. "Pregnant," he repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How convenient. Tell me, Natalie, what's your price? 1 million? 5 million? How much for this pathetic attempt at extortion?" "What? No, I don't want money. I just thought you should know that I'm going to be a father." Marcus stood, his movements controlled but his eyes blazing. "Impossible. I'm infertile. I have medical documentation from when I was 15, a severe illness left me with 0 sperm count. So whatever game you're playing, whatever scheme you've concocted, it won't work on me." Natalie felt like the floor had dropped beneath her. "I'm not lying. I haven't been with anyone else. This baby is yours whether you believe it or not." "Get out of my office," Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. "You're fired, effective immediately. And if you try to pursue this ridiculous claim, my lawyers will destroy you. I won't be trapped by some desperate woman looking for a payday." "Marcus, please, just listen." "Security," he shouted into his intercom. "Escort Miss Chen from the building. She's no longer employed here." 2 security guards appeared within seconds. Natalie's face burned with humiliation as they flanked her. She looked at Marcus one last time, seeing nothing but cold hatred in his eyes. "I hope someday you realize what you've done," she whispered before walking out with whatever dignity remained. The walk through the office was the longest of her life. Colleagues stared as security escorted her to her desk to collect her belongings. She heard the whispers, saw the judgment. By tomorrow, everyone would assume she'd done something terrible, but Marcus wasn't finished destroying her. Within days, Natalie discovered she'd been blacklisted. No architecture firm in San Francisco would interview her. Marcus had made calls, spread rumors about her being unethical and manipulative. Her career, her reputation, everything she'd worked for was ashes. That night, Natalie cried until she had no tears left. Then she made a decision. She would leave San Francisco, start over somewhere else, and raise this baby alone. Marcus Blackwell had made his choice, and her child would never know the cruel, heartless man who had rejected them both. Within a week, Natalie had packed her old Honda Civic with everything she owned and driven away from San Francisco, heading north with no destination in mind, just a fierce determination to protect the life growing inside her from the man who had called her a liar and thrown her away like garbage. Natalie's car gave out in Crescent Bay, a small coastal town in Oregon, 200 miles north of San Francisco. At first, it seemed like another disaster in her string of disasters. But as she stood beside her smoking vehicle, breathing in the salt air and watching fishing boats bob in the harbor, something inside her settled. The town was charming, colorful Victorian houses lined the waterfront, local shops had hand-painted signs, and life moved with the rhythm of the tides rather than the chaos of the city. With her car beyond repair and savings dwindling, Natalie had no choice but to stay. She found a small studio apartment above a coffee shop called the Daily Grind. The landlord, Margaret Stone, a kind woman in her 60s, gave her the first month free when she noticed Natalie's growing belly. "Everyone deserves a fresh start, dear," Margaret said warmly. "Especially young mothers." Finding work proved challenging until Natalie walked into Coastal Canvas, a local art gallery that also sold handmade furniture and home goods. The owner, Thomas Wade, was immediately impressed by her eye for design and her ideas for reimagining the gallery space. "You're overqualified for this job," Thomas observed, "but I'm not going to ask questions. Welcome aboard." At 4 months pregnant, Natalie also found a doctor. Dr. Evan Rivers ran the only medical clinic in Crescent Bay. At 33, he had kind hazel eyes, dark hair that always looked slightly windswept, and a gentle manner that immediately put patients at ease. "No partner?" Evan asked gently during her first appointment, noticing the absence of a father. "No. Just me and the baby." Evan never pressed for details, but he gave Natalie his personal cell number in case of emergencies and took special care with her throughout the pregnancy. He started stopping by Coastal Canvas after his clinic shifts, ostensibly for coffee, but really to check on her. Their friendship deepened naturally. They'd talk for hours about books, about his decision to leave a prestigious Portland hospital for small-town practice, about her dreams of one day designing again. He never made her feel damaged or less than for being pregnant and alone. One evening at 6 months pregnant, they sat on a bench outside the gallery watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Evan took her hand gently. "Natalie, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice nervous but determined. "I've fallen in love with you. I know your situation is complicated, and I don't know what happened with the baby's father, but I don't care. I want to be there for you and this baby, if you'll let me." Tears sprang to Natalie's eyes. After everything Marcus had done, after feeling so worthless and discarded, here was a good man offering exactly what she needed. "Evan, I care about you too," she said carefully. "But I'm still healing from what happened. The father was cruel to me in ways I'm still processing." "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow," Evan said gently. "I'm just asking you to let me be here. Let me show you what real love looks like." Natalie leaned into him, and when he kissed her softly, she felt something she hadn't felt since leaving San Francisco: hope. 300 miles south in San Francisco, Marcus Blackwell's carefully controlled world was crumbling. He'd thrown himself into work after firing Natalie, closing deals with ruthless efficiency, building his empire higher. But at night, alone in his penthouse, he was haunted by dreams of a baby crying, of Natalie's hurt eyes. The breaking point came 6 months after Natalie had left. Marcus had developed persistent health issues and his doctor ordered comprehensive testing, including updated fertility panels as part of a routine workup. Dr. Richard Chen called Marcus into his office personally to discuss the results, his expression grave. "Marcus, I need to tell you something that's going to be difficult to hear," Dr. Chen began. "Your current fertility tests show completely normal sperm count and motility. You're not infertile. You never were." Marcus stared at him, uncomprehending. "That's impossible. I was tested at 15 after my illness. The results clearly showed." "I pulled your old records," Dr. Chen interrupted gently. "There was a clerical error at the lab 21 years ago. Your samples were mixed up with another patient's. The infertility diagnosis you've been living with your entire adult life was wrong. You've always been capable of fathering children." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The room seemed to spin as the implications crashed over him. Natalie had been telling the truth. She was pregnant with his child. And he had called her a liar, destroyed her career, driven her away. "Oh God," Marcus whispered, his face draining of color. "What have I done?" He tried calling Natalie's number immediately, disconnected. He went to her old apartment, new tenants, no forwarding address. He contacted her emergency references from her employment file, all said they hadn't heard from her in months. Panic consumed him. Marcus hired the best private investigator in California, a woman named Sarah Cross who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. "I need you to find someone," Marcus said urgently. Natalie Chen. 28 years old. Former employee. "She's pregnant with my child, and I need to find her." As Sarah investigated, Marcus learned the full extent of the damage he'd caused. Natalie had been blacklisted from every architecture firm in San Francisco because of his calls. Her reputation had been destroyed. She'd left the city with no job prospects, pregnant and alone. The guilt was crushing. Marcus realized that this baby, his baby, was his only biological legacy. His parents were dead. He had no siblings. This child was the only family he would ever have, and he had rejected them before they were even born. 2 weeks later, Sarah called. "I found her. Crescent Bay, Oregon. She's working at an art gallery. And Mr. Blackwell, there's something else you should know. There's a man. A doctor. He's been seen with her regularly. They appear to be together." Marcus felt rage and jealousy surge through him, followed immediately by crushing regret. He had driven Natalie into another man's arms. But that baby was his, and he would fix this mistake no matter what it took. That he got in his car and drove north to Crescent Bay, determined to reclaim what he had thrown away. Marcus arrived in Crescent Bay on a gray October morning, 8 months after Natalie had left San Francisco. He found Coastal Canvas easily. It was the only art gallery in town. Through the window, he saw her. Natalie was 8 months pregnant now, her belly round and prominent beneath a flowing dress. She was laughing at something, her face glowing with a happiness he'd never seen when she worked for him. Beside her stood a tall man with dark hair, the doctor, Marcus assumed, his hand resting protectively on her lower back. Something primal and possessive roared to life in Marcus's chest. That was his child. His family. This stranger had no right to them. He pushed through the door, and Natalie's laughter died the instant she saw him. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "We need to talk," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Please, Natalie. It's important." Evan stepped between them protectively. "I think you should leave. Natalie doesn't want to see you." "And who are you?" Marcus's voice turned cold and imperious. "This is between me and the mother of my child." "I'm the man who's been here for her," Evan replied evenly. "The one who didn't call her a liar and destroy her life." Marcus flinched but pushed forward. "Natalie, I was wrong. The fertility diagnosis was an error. A lab mix-up from 21 years ago. I just found out. You were telling the truth, and I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" Natalie's voice rose with fury. "You're sorry? You called me a gold digger. You fired me. You blacklisted me so I couldn't work anywhere in San Francisco. You destroyed everything I'd built, and now you show up 8 months later with sorry?" "I want to make this right," Marcus insisted. "I want to be a father to our child. I'll do whatever it takes." "No." Natalie's voice was firm and final. "You had your chance. You chose to believe I was a liar rather than trust me for even a moment. This baby deserves better than a father who only showed up when it was convenient for him. That's my child." Marcus's control snapped. "My biological child. I have rights. You have nothing, Natalie said coldly. Biology doesn't make you a father. Being there does. And the only man who's been here is Evan. He's the one who held my hair during morning sickness. He's the one who's been to every doctor's appointment. He's the one who already loves this baby. Not you. Marcus felt his world crumbling. Please, Natalie. That baby is my only legacy. My only family. Don't take that from me. You took it from yourself, Natalie replied, her eyes glistening with tears. The moment you looked at me with hatred instead of trust. Now leave, Marcus. And don't come back. 2 months later, Natalie gave birth to a healthy baby girl she named Sophie. Evan was there, holding her hand through every contraction, cutting the umbilical cord, crying with joy when Sophie let out her first cry. Through her lawyer, Natalie sent Marcus the paternity test results and a single photo of Sophie. She also sent legal documents. Evan would adopt Sophie as soon as the law allowed. Marcus could have supervised visitation if he chose, but Natalie was making it clear, Evan was Sophie's real father in every way that mattered. 6 months later, Marcus saw social media photos through a mutual acquaintance, Natalie and Evan's engagement announcement, with baby Sophie between them, all three of them glowing with happiness. The family that could have been his, now belonged to a better man. Marcus sat alone in his penthouse, surrounded by wealth and success, with his billion-dollar empire stretched out before him. But none of it meant anything. He had rejected his only chance at family, at love, at legacy, because of pride and cruelty. In Crescent Bay, Natalie danced in her small living room with Sophie in her arms while Evan cooked dinner, singing off-key love songs. She had lost everything in San Francisco, but she'd gained something far more valuable, a partner who chose her, a man who loved her child as his own, and the knowledge that she had built a beautiful life from the ashes of her worst moment. Marcus Blackwell would live with his wealth and his regrets. But Natalie Chen would live with love, and in the end, that was the only legacy that truly mattered.